Good morning, Sitaram, and welcome to another program in the series Addiction and Recovery. I'm your host, Ram Naresh Dwarika, as usual on a Thursday morning at 9 a.m. We discuss matters relating to alcoholism, drug addiction, recovery, and matters pertaining to those issues. And I want to remind our listeners this program is being recorded and it will be posted on Facebook and YouTube soon after its completion this morning. It will also be repeated on radio and TV Jagriti tonight at 10 p.m. So those of you who can't stay for the whole program, you can listen to it later today, or you can go back to YouTube on my link, Ramnaresh Dwarika, Addiction and Recovery, and you would be able to look at it there. And you can also use it as a resource material that if you want to send a link to someone who you believe could benefit from this program, you're quite welcome to do that. If you have questions, you can also raise it then. I have a text number on my screen here. You can text questions to that number, and only I would be willing to respond to them there. Over the last few weeks, I've been dealing with issues relating to recovery in a kind of sequential manner. I spoke earlier in the year about making that resolution to stop drinking, what is involved, what are some of the challenges, what are the resources available. Then I spoke about making that decision, whether to do it on your own, and if you were doing it on your own, how you could go about doing that, or if you had to consider going into a rehabilitation center. Last week, I spoke about what are some of those things you can expect when you go into a rehab center, because there's a lot of misconceptions about, what goes on there. Family members have sometimes unrealistic expectations that if they send their relative, their sibling there or whoever, that they could work magic in there and you'll come back like how you used to be before you became addicted to the drugs. And it doesn't work like that. And then a lot of people who are considering stopping going into a rehab, they do not know what happens there because not many people visit rehab centers. And maybe that's an idea. Sometimes we should have an open day where members of the public can come in to the rehab centers and see the conditions there to get our orientation as to what are the expectations on both sides of the clients and as well as the administration of the rehab center. A lot of people feel, well, it is like prison, it is like boot camp. So there's a lot of misconception and that really fuels fear sometimes that could really prevent a person, can impact their ability to make that decision whether to go to a rehab center or not. So last week I spoke about that. So you have a kind of bird's eye view of what happens when you go into a rehab center, what you can expect and what is expected of you. And we also discussed why. Today I want to look at when you are discharged from a rehab center. Now, what are some of the issues relating to remaining in recovery? What is you can expect of the center and of your society? And what is important if you want to not only stop, but stay stopped and be comfortable. So today we will be talking about something many people don't fully understand, and that is not getting clean, but staying clean. Stopping is hard, but staying stopped comfortably is much more harder. It's something that you'll have to do for the rest of your life. So, because leaving a rehabilitation center is not the end of the journey, as family members would like it to be, or even the addicted person, it is the beginning of a new life. Now, many people complete treatment, and when you come out there, remember in treatment, when you went there, you were basically restricted from going outside in most centers. You have to stay. It's an in-house treatment. And so you get up in the morning and you are not exposed to the rigorous tasks that you might have been doing when you were outside. So in a quick time, your body recovers physically. You get to sleep a lot while you're in detox. You get to rest. You eat a lot of nutritious foods now for those people who were on the streets and all of that before. So in a quick time, you start to feel strong. You're sleeping better, eating better, and you begin to feel hopeful, because in there, you're not exposed to the temptations, and the urges and all of that. But within weeks or months, these same people, after coming out of rehab, they relapse. Some of them, that is. And today I want to look at why some of them don't make it, why they relapse. And more importantly, how can we prevent it? Understanding it is one thing, but doing something in it is very easy. We always see what's wrong and we quick to criticize and to give opinions and so on. But we also need to look at why and how to prevent that, how to solve the problem. So today I want to explore the truth about recovery after rehabilitation and the tools that will help people to stay free from drug free and how they're able to do it one day at a time. So these are some of the realities after you leave a rehab center. When someone leaves a rehab, they often feel strong, they feel motivated, their mind is much more clear, and but they are also vulnerable at this stage because you know the emotions they not too if depending on the length of the program. The program at Coro Hospital, for instance, is 6 weeks. There are some programs that are 3 months, and like New Life Ministries and Heal House and so on. And then there's the one that used to be at Piparo. It's almost 9 months. And there's some where you stay in the stream of rehabilitation. You After 9 months, you're still going to what is called a halfway house. So you are in a semi-supervised, protected environment where it is much more easier to stay sober. But when you leave the rehab center, you are re entering the same environment that fed the addiction in the first place. So you might be coming back home where you live right next to the drug block or a stone's throw from the rum shop. And remember, you had all your drinking friends who will come look for you. And there's a saying, misery likes company. People who are still drinking and using drugs really don't support or like to see another person stop because it's like a personal affront to them, and I have had personal experience with that where people, say they tell you all kind of things to goad you on to go back and take that drink. They'll accuse you of trying to be stingy now. You forget the days when you were drinking and you're trying to become a priest or something, or you're afraid of your spouse. All kinds of things they will tell you to goad you on to go back and take that drink. And this is why one of the things you need to do is just stay away from those kinds of people, especially in the initial stage of recovery. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So that the key message here is that rehab is a protected environment. In a rehabilitation center, life is not real there, That's not the real world. That is a controlled environment where you have supervision all the time, you have people around you who are not using, you have rules, strict rules that would restrict you and restrain you. Actually, there are literally walls around these places, that is with fence and all of that, and barbed wire and all kinds of things to prevent you from jumping over and escaping when you get the urge. And there's security. 24 hours that are keeping an eye on you, and you are aware of that, and they remind you of the consequences of sneaking in drugs anyhow, or attempting to leave the program and so on, the consequences of that. You may not be permitted to re-enter and all of that. There are rules so that now leaving the center and coming back home, the person faces the same old friends who's still using. There's also the same family conflict and environment that they left, because in homes where people are using drugs, there's a lot of confusion, conflict, argument. You know, the addicted person who went for treatment would have had made a lot of enemies, sometimes with their own siblings and the parents and the neighbors and all of that. And you have to come back to all of that, and all the feelings are still there. As I say, you are emotionally raw. So there's also financial stress, because you might have had to, now if you had a job, you would have had to go on no pay leave, or you probably lost your job. Or if you had your own business, you would have been away for 6 weeks, 3 months, or whatever, and there'd be a loss of income. So there could be, and there would have been financial stress even before that. You might have racked up a whole set of debts and so on because of your drinking and drug use, and being backward in your loan and mortgage payment and all of that. So all of these things just hit you immediately as you come out of the rehab center. So there are triggers everywhere. Besides, there are psychological triggers. There are some people who have psychological triggers. That is to say, they go to a certain environment and they get the urge. They listen to a kind of music and they get the urge. They have they remember certain things and they get the urge, or they get into a crowd or in an argument, you know. And this is why one of the popular guidelines for people coming out of wanting to stay sober is the mnemonic HALT. You need to avoid hunger, H for hunger. You need to avoid anger, getting into conflict, quarrels, because a lot of people, anger could send you to a stage, where you emotionally become unstable. And the habit has been in the past, when you feel like that, is to go and drink or use drugs, to deal with the trauma, the stress. So again, you are surrounded by the triggers. Being in the rehab center, you will not have had the exposure to all these triggers. But coming out immediately, and if you're not prepared, because just putting down the glass and stopping drinking for 6 weeks or 3 months does not really resolve all the issues involved in drug addiction. The alcohol is one thing, but the ism, the ISM, some people translate it to mean I still mad. You stop drinking, but you're still mad, meaning you still have not dealt with the psychological and social predisposing factors and precipitating factors and the perpetuating factors of your drug addiction. So that most importantly, you need to remember this stage that, look, this is a 24-hour program. As I said before, you don't, in the center, you had 24 hours supervision, but here you're on your own, basically. So that I also want to say that relapse does not happen suddenly. Relapse is not an event, it's a process. Long before the person pick up the drug, the drink, or the smoke, or whatever, there's a whole lot of things that goes on in their mind. They relapse in their head long before they relapse physically. They've been thinking about the drinking. They're starting to go back with the same old friends in the shop. They're starting to glamorize their drinking episodes and so on, boast and brag about it. That, look, I have been able to stop now, and people who are around them who do not understand will buy into that and say, yeah, man, look, 3 months you didn't drink. You're looking good. You could take a drink now. You could handle it. They appeal to your ego, and every one of us like to get that kind of flattery, that promotes our ego and makes us feel that, look, now I'm competent and I could prove myself. So that first, there's different stages of relapse. Let us, as I said earlier on, relapse is not an event, it's a process. So that some of the predisposing factors that can indicate you're heading to a relapse is one, bottling up your feelings. You know, I heard a young man recently talking about that. He recently came out of rehab, and he in his family he got into a quarrel, and he wants to prove to his family that, look, I am self-sufficient. I am capable of handling my stories. So he's bottling up his feelings. He doesn't want to tell them, well, look, I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling to take a drink, because they will feel, they'll panic. So a lot of people bottle up their feelings, and then they start isolating, because to hide the reality of how they're feeling, they withdraw from the group, from the family. They're spending a lot of time in their room and all of that. And the worst company for any alcoholic or drug addict to keep in recovery is their own. Staying by themselves is not such a good idea, because an idle brain is the devil workshop. That's when the urges and all of that will come back, the overthinking. Then also, a good indicator is poor sleep, because alcohol is a sedative, cocaine is a stimulant, marijuana can act as both. And all these psychotropic drugs have a profound impact on the psyche of the individual who is using it. So that for alcoholics, when you stop drinking, alcohol being a sedative, you definitely are going to have problems with sleep. And then I know a lot of people go to AA meetings and they go and drink coffee on top of that and make matters worse. So that poor sleep makes your immune system gets compromised, but also make you less able to cope. I know when I don't sleep well, I become very irritable. I have a short fuse. Even now, if I didn't sleep well last night, today I will tend to be impatient. And this happens with alcoholics and drug addicts in recovery. So wanting to appear to be self-sufficient, you all spent so much money to send me into rehab and put so much effort and encouragement, put your lives on hold, and now I can't appear to have failed you all. So if even I am on the brink of relapse, I the person tend to not want to ask for help. They still try to fight it. We have been brought up on a diet of being self-sufficient. Our parents, when you were small, boy, you're old enough to bathe for yourself. You're old enough to tie your shoelace. You're old enough to clean your room and make up your bed now. And our parents keep encouraging us to become independent, because at some point they will not be around and they want to make sure that we can take care of ourselves. And we, on the other hand, want to prove to our parents that, look, yes, we are as early as we can. We want to appear to be self sufficient. And as a result, a lot of people do not reach out and ask for help, because we do not have, when you're very egotistical, it is very difficult to be humble to ask for help. So then the next stage of the relapse, first you have the emotional relapse, bottling up your feelings, isolation, poor sleep, not asking for help. But then there's the mental relapse, where you relapse in your head. When you start thinking about using, you go back and remember all the pleasant times, because a lot of people have their drug addiction intertwined with a certain lifestyle, the friends and the partying and a whole lot of that lifestyle, that river lime and card game and relationships, you know, music and all of that. You know, a lot of people glorify these things in their mind. And so they start thinking about using first. They don't use, but they're thinking, I wonder if I could just go and take one. I would have always liked to do that, go and take one or two drinks, just like other people, and then go about my business. You know, they start romanticizing about past drug use. Boy, that was a good time. I remember that time when we all went and made that cook and music, and yeah, they were good times. But you have to also understand what were the consequences after. You know, in recovery, you have to start thinking consequentially. If I do this, what will happen? And you have to, that is why honesty is critical, because you could start rationalizing and lying to yourself and justifying like you did for years. And then you'll tell yourself, one time won't hurt. Nobody will know. You understand? And there's all these kinds of little adventures we keep rehashing in our mind. And then the last stage is the actual use, you know. And at this stage, I want to differentiate between what is a slip and what is a full-blown relapse. Now, okay, you are in recovery and you go to a function and somebody pour a little alcohol in your glass behind your back while you were not looking, right? And you drank it. Now, that still is, you have to be very, very careful and be honest with yourself, because it is probably the reason why God put our nose right above our mouth. And then for an alcoholic who is in recovery, he will smell the slightest trace of alcohol, in his glass. So you need to, this is why you need to, if you go to parties, you need to keep your glass with you. You need to pour your drink yourself. And I have spoken about that just before the Christmas, for all those people in recovery who were being invited to Christmas functions and so on. What are some of the guidelines when you go to these? And we'll probably look at them again. But that if you drink it like that, that's a slip. That does not give you license now to continue to drink after that. If you continue to drink after that, it's because you always had the intention, and you're using that as an excuse. You understand? As opposed to a person who went and took one, and once you take one, you will want to take another one. And that's it. That is the difference between a social drinker and an alcoholic. A social drinker can take one, two, or three drinks and leave it and go about their business without having the craving for another. But it is said for the alcoholic, the best drink is always the next drink. And that is the hallmark of alcoholism. When he's not drinking, he's not drinking. But the minute he takes that one drink, it develops a craving, a chemical reaction inside that calls for more and more and more. And there are many times I can recall myself going deliberately and with all good intention just to go and take one beer and telling my family to take out my food. I'm coming back now. I'm just going for one beer. Or with friends, I'm just going to have a beer or so. And then I stayed to get drunk. That is alcoholism. So the key insight here is that relapse starts long before the drug is used. And this is very important for therapists, for family members, and for people in recovery to start looking at themselves and saying, hey, I'm heading down the wrong way. I have often given the example, there are large signboards that tell you you are heading towards a relapse. Like, for instance, if staying sober is being in Chabonas. If you're in Chabonas, you're sober. And being drunk is being in Port of Spain. If you are heading to Port of Spain, you are going to see a lot of signboards on the way that telling you you're heading to Port of Spain. You'll see Endeavor, you'll see Weimar, you'll see Aranguez, and you'll see all these signboards. So too in recovery, you will you see a lot of signboards. That is, you start thinking about drinking, you stop going to meetings. These are all signboards. You start hanging out with friends who you used to drink with, although you're not drinking yet. All of these are telling you you're very, very close to Port of Spain. Like I enumerated before, all of these mental, um, emotional factors and mental factors that lead you eventually are the signboards that tell you, hey, you're heading back to drinking. And it is important for family members to know of these things if you are going to really be able to help your loved one. So, again, I want to look at the foundation of recovery. To stay in recovery, a person must build a new lifestyle. You know, some people translate the word Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, to altered attitudes. It means changing your attitudes to life as well, so that you have to now introduce structure into your life. For the alcoholic or the drug addict who was using and so on, Sunday could fall on Monday, as we say, you know. But now that you're sober, you need to reintroduce structure so that your body, we have a biological clock inside of us that wakes us up at a certain time and makes us feel sleepy at a certain time. And it's called the circadian rhythm. And it also is very important to maintain that rhythm if we want to be in good health naturally, for all human beings. You know, it is suggested that we should not have anything to eat after the sun goes down. And then our first meal should be around about 7 or 8 in the morning, which gives our body enough time to digest the food, to take all the nutrients out of it, and for the body to heal overnight while we are sleeping. But when we go and disturb that, drinking into the middle of the night, eating late in the night, cutters and all of that, the lifestyle. I mean, I can remember because I was there. I've been there, done that. So that now you want to be able to wake up at a certain time every day. You want to, well, you may want to add certain activities. I get up early in the morning and I would do my exercise now, yoga, I'll do my meditation, I'll do my prayers. And then my that will how my day will begin. So that lends to a healthy lifestyle and deals with all the psychological stresses as well. Now, you also want to engage in work and meaningful activity, because to just sit down there and have nothing to do, I can't do that. I don't have time in whatever is left of my life to waste. You know, I am either, yes, we need to rest at times, but we need to become gainfully employed. Even if you don't have a job, if you just came out of rehab, start helping around the house. Put in some plants. If you don't have a garden, you can put it in little pots. And this is what your family members will look at to see the changes, how you used to be. And look, you're helping around the house, you're offering to help other people, and so on. You're getting into meaningful activity. And this is why in AA, members are encouraged to get involved in service. So you don't really have time to waste, because we wasted a lot of time while we were drinking and using drugs. And then you need to schedule meetings. I suggest to people as soon as they come out of a rehab, join an AA or NA group, get a sponsor, get involved in service as early as you can, because idle time is dangerous for an alcoholic or drug addict in recovery. And it is also very good now to develop a routine. A routine takes a lot of thinking out of the equation, where you just flow. You go with the flow, you have a routine, set up every day. You don't have to think now what to do and waste time. So recovery thrives on consistency, being consistent. So other people know what to expect of you, and you know what to expect of yourself, and your body knows what to expect of your mind. And there's a union taking place between your body and your mind, your brain and your body. And so that you sleep at the same time every evening. And as a result, you get a full night's rest and you get up at the same time in the morning. So that, as I say this, I want to just remind you that, as we grow older, we don't need so much sleep. When we were born, we needed like 23 hours out of 24 because we just wake up to eat and because your body was growing and developing. But now at my age, for instance, my body, I don't want it to grow anymore because I don't want to put on weight and all of that. So I don't need as much sleep, but at least if I get minimum 4 to 5 hours sleep, I'm all right. And if I get more, I take more. So that if you go to sleep by 10 o'clock after you come from meetings and so on, and you wake up at 6, you would have gotten your 8 hours still, which is a lot more than enough sleep for the grown person. The other thing is to eat properly. Now, remember when we were drinking and using drugs, we really did not pay much attention to our personal health. A lot of people eat a lot of crap. I remember, well, I referred to it earlier. Cutters, you go in the bar and they'll cut up meat with a lot of pepper, maybe pork or chicken or whatever. Those my compatriots outside you listening will know what I'm talking about. Or chow, and you would eat these things because people who are drinking they don't want to eat really. They will say that the food has take up the wrong space, but the truth is when you eat a lot, you get the urge to vomit because of what's happening in the stomach. So they don't eat. And as a result, over time, alcoholics and drug addicts all become very malnourished. Now that you're in recovery, you need to start eating properly. Even for people who are not addicted, our stomachs is really the manufacturing place for all the medication that our body need. But there's a saying, if you don't eat your food as medicine, then you will have to eat medicine as food, which is true. And I'm seeing that happening in our society now. People are on pediatric this to geriatric that, to something to sleep, something to wake, something, all kinds of things. But because we're not eating properly, and eating properly does not really mean having to eat expensive food. A lot of times, the expensive things are really not good for you. The meat and the alcohol and all of those things that are very expensive. The simple cucumber and lettuce and greens and so on, and fruits, the mango and the guava, these are essential foods so that you need to eat properly and you need to stay active. A very important segment, and I would have spoken a little bit about that last week, is exercise in recovery. In rehab centers, they always have an exercise program. Why? Because when you're eating properly and you start exercising, your own body starts talking to you. Your body is literally saying, hey, when last you feel as good as this? Exercise will tone up the muscles and increase the circulation and make you sleep better. And your general sense of well being is improved. And that is why exercise is just as important as eating properly, which is just as important as sleeping well. Those three things are critical in recovery: sleeping well, eating well, and exercise. Now, you cannot recover alone. You know, you alone have to do it. Nobody can do it for you. But you can't do it alone. It sounds paradoxical, but it is true. Very few people I know who had really reached chronic addiction being able to do this on their own. Yeah, and some of them might have stopped drinking or using the drugs because of fear, because of some crisis that they might have encountered. But their stinking thinking still remains. They're still behaving and relating the same way because of the underlying factors of the disease that they have never addressed. And this is why it is important to get into recovery programs like AA and NA, where it is literally said, they take you out of the gutter And then over time, they take the gutter out of you. So that it is very important that you have people who are like sponsors. In AA, you have sponsors. A person going to an AA meeting can choose someone that they admire, who they obviously is practicing the program and demonstrating that level of attraction that tells you, hey, he's sober and he's really living a good life. He has discovered what it is, the happiness that AA has promised. And then for others, you have counselors like myself, where you can go and talk to, or you can call, you know, and you have also support groups like NA, AA, Al Anon, Alateen. There's Smokers Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. So that, again, support systems are very, very critical because recovery is really a team effort. Key support systems will include groups like Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and these groups, what they do, they provide daily support. They provide people in other members in the group provide what is called shared experiences, which makes you realize that, hey, I'm not alone in this. That's one of the things, because of the stigma associated with alcoholism and drug addiction, a lot of people keep it a secret and they don't talk about it. And as a result, they don't realize that a lot of other people have the same issues, same problems, you know, and they think that they are alone. But, when you get to find out that it's not only me, there's so many others who are describing the same feelings and experiences I am having, it makes you realize that, look, and if they could stop, I could do it as well. There's strength in numbers. So these groups provide daily support, this provide shared experiences that help the person who is still in denial, although he went to a rehab, he's still not, sure he's an alcoholic. We always like to think it will happen with everybody, but not with me. I'm different. Um, so that you realize that, look, you are not alone in this, that there are other people and that they are doing it and they will show you how to do it. And it helps you to accept. So you move from admitting that you are an alcoholic by going to meetings and listening, you move from admitting to accepting. There's a difference between admitting, because a lot of people admit under stress, under pressure, begrudgingly, because that's the right thing to say and they want to avoid confrontation. So yeah, I think I have a problem with alcohol. I'm an alcoholic. But in their hearts, they don't really believe it. And those were the people who have the reservations that will eventually relapse. But by going to meetings and listening to other people, eventually you are able to move from admitting to accepting. When a person accepts, well, look, you know what? I am an alcoholic. I can't go back and drink. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. So that that's when your recovery really begins. That's when you really become willing to change your attitude and make the sacrifices that is required if you are going to be able to stay sober. Now, family support is critical in this situation. I know some people would have ended up on the street with no family and so on, or no connections, although family they have, but nobody wants to have anything to do with them. But those who have the family support, and for some people, AA members become their family. I've heard so many people speak about that. So family as well need to understand certain things. If you're going to be helpful, you need to understand that addiction is a disease. It's not a bad habit. It was not a moral failing. It's a disease and is recognized by the World Health Authority, by our own Trinidad Ministry of Health. Our authorities here recognize that alcoholism is a disease. As I say that, I want to thank people like Professor Boburn and they who are at the forefront of moving that envelope forward to helping the world to accept that alcoholism is a disease and not a bad habit. And so that when family members understand it's a disease, they will now not enable the person to continue to use by feeding into that disease, you know. And they also, members need to be able to set boundaries, even for the active user as well as the person in recovery. You know, this I will do for you, but this I will not. You can't stay sober for the person. You know, you can't go to the meetings for them. They have to go to the meetings. They have to do the things that will keep them sober, and so on. And then professional help, of course, is very, very useful in counseling. Very important, because a lot of people would have used in response to their inability to deal with sometime early childhood trauma, crisis experiences, emotional trauma, and so on. Some people need to go into therapy. Although the the 12 steps do provide a certain amount of therapeutic benefit, the avenue sometimes is not always available for some people to speak about certain personal issues that they're having, or if they're having financial problems because of bad investments, they will probably need to speak to someone who is adept at financial matters. So they need to get into therapy and psychiatric care if needed. Now, I say that because in the initial stages of detox and so on, very often psychiatrists are the only one really licensed and professionally um, able to prescribe psychotropic medication. And sometimes in detox, some people need to be managed with medication. But I would say at this juncture, I find that there is an abuse of that by a lot of patients. When they leave, they want to continue to take the sleeping pills and all of that, and they create a bigger problem for themselves. So that in recovery, a person need to be able to identify their triggers and how to handle them. Some of the common triggers would be hanging out with people that you used to, because in active use, if you check, you'll see most of the alcoholic or drug addict friends are people who are using. I can remember that. If you're in drinking, me picking you up. Sorry about that. You have to also avoid places associated with use. You also have to learn how to deal with stress in a new way, because in the old days of drinking, one would tend to, as soon as we feel stressed out, we head for the bar, or we go pick up that spliff or that marijuana. So the whole program of recovery is about reducing stress, avoiding behaviors and so on that generate further stress, and then also learning new methods like exercise, meditation, making amends, avoiding conflict, and being honest and being helpful and all of that, that will prevent you from generating stress and feel better about yourself. Loneliness is also a critical element that one has to be able to deal with. Um, as I said before, in active use, the alcoholic or the drug addict, most of his friends are going to be alcoholics and drug addicts. Now, the first advice you get when you leave the rehab center is to stay away from slippery people, slippery places, slippery situations. Mean you have to stay away from those kinds of friends, which would, of course, translate into you becoming lonely. And loneliness is one of the things that can send you back to using, because you start feeling sorry for yourself. Self-pity is a prominent cause of relapse. And I've heard it said, when you're wallowing in self-pity, you're saying, pour me, and then you say, pour me a drink. So that this is one of the essential reasons that a person need to find support groups like Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous so that now you don't be lonely. You know, on a average situation, a person will now get up in time, go to work, at the end of the day's work, come home, spend a little time with their family, have dinner and so on. And then they go to the meeting. And when they get back from the meeting at 9 o'clock, 9:30, it's just about time to go to sleep, to readjust their circadian rhythm. And that works beautifully, you know, so that you're not lonely. And then you also have to, one of the common triggers is celebrations. Very important in our Trinidad culture, Christmas, Carnival, Easter just went. And this is why some of the groups, the AA groups in Trinidad, organize what you call marathon meetings, alcathons, and so on. So that on those occasions, people in recovery can come to these meetings where they can spend the day in activities and so on that will keep them away from getting lonely and wanting to go and use the drugs. So, how to manage some of these triggers is to avoid high risk situations. If you have just left rehab, you should not be liming in the same environment with people who are using. And then you need to ask yourself, what will happen after I use? Because you need to start thinking now consequentially. In drinking and drug use, you never bother about what happened. You just, man, look, what will be, will be. That song. But now you have to start thinking after so many times, you do not want to reinvent the wheel. How many times you told yourself this time it will not happen, and it did. You got charged, for, brutalized, and had to pay this large fine, and some people you went to jail. So another thing is do not try to fight the cravings alone. If you're getting the urge to take the drug or use, call someone immediately. And this is why in AA they suggest you should have sponsors, members of the group. You have their phone numbers. So if you don't get one, you can get somebody else to talk and you can tell them, hey, this happened. I'm so upset, with a quarrel I had with a spouse or a relative or something. And, I'm feeling I could go and take a drink. And they will talk to you, or they'll come and look for you, or members know how to deal with that. And of course, the mnemonic I referred to earlier on, the word HALT, HALT, you avoid hunger, anger, loneliness, and tiredness. These are four things that can send the alcoholic or the drug addict straight back to using. And these are simple little things, but they are powerful because when your stomach full, it reduces the craving. When you're not angry, your brain is thinking right. You're in your right senses, as we say. And when you're not lonely, you have people around you, you're less likely to go and pick up a drink. Because the people around you, if you are not hanging out with your drinking friends, would be people who want you to stay sober, your family members, and they are going, because of their presence and being there, you are not going to pull out a drink or in front of them and drink, or smoke. So some of the daily recovery tools I want to look at is prayer or meditation. All the fellowships recommend that prayer and meditation, and that is one of the steps. Actually, it is step 11 of the AA program and the NA program that we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. So that prayer and meditation is critical, and I know it works because it works for me. Gratitude is also a very important thing. That's something I do as well. I say a prayer of gratitude every morning as I awaken. It might sound like this: God, thank you for the opportunity of seeing another day. Thank you for a roof over my head. Thank you for a bed to get up from. Thank you for hands and feet that are working. Thank you for the air that I breathe, for the air, for the sunshine, for those birds, for those family members around me. Thank you for all of them. By the time I finish, thank God, I realize, look at the amount of things I have, you know, And our minds tend to only go on, get stuck on those things that we don't have, so that we need to remind ourselves every day of those things that we have, and we are taking it for granted. Look at our brothers and sisters worldwide, what's happening with some of them couldn't sleep last night. Bombs dropping all over their head. Some of them are having to deal with the loss of a relative this morning. A lot of bad things are happening in the world. So if once you are alive, in fact, I have been saying to myself and other people, if you're unhappy, it's really because you're ungrateful. Because if you were dead, you couldn't be unhappy. And to have life and be alive is enough to be grateful for. So gratitude is important. Some people journal, they write the daily activities, so they could go back and look at themselves. And I spoke earlier about the importance of exercise, because a strong mind needs a strong body. If you don't have a strong body, your mind is going to also get weak. In my school that I went to, they had this sign above the entrance, mens sane in corpore sano, mean a strong mind in a strong body. So eat properly and exercise. And then, of course, attending meetings. Attending meetings is what helps you to move from admitting to accepting. So that recovery is not, I will never use again. No. Sometimes for some people, relapse might be part of recovery because they didn't listen in the first instance. They hadn't, and they had to go and find out a second time. But recovery is really saying, I will not use today. And when you look at it like that, there's a lot of things you can change in your life. You can not only stop using drugs, you can say, look, just for today, I will not tell a lie. Just for today, I'm going to look for the first opportunity I get to do anything good for anyone, and I will not pass it up. Just for today, I will be kind to someone else. And the truth is, whether we like it or not, we could only live one day at a time. It doesn't matter how rich or poor you are, how strong or weak or what color or what ethnicity. We all have only today. So just do it for today. Now, there's a danger in overconfidence. Some people, as they come out of rehab, stay sober for a while, say, listen, I got this. I don't need to go anywhere. And as their ego, this thinking leads to skipping meetings, cutting off support, going back to the old environments. And the truth is, recovery requires ongoing effort. It is not a one shot and done thing. So that recovery is not about being perfect. It is about getting up when you fall, even if you relapse, don't stay down. You never fail until you stop trying. You never fail until you stop trying. So it is about getting up, dusting yourself off, and going again, man. Because, all right, what has happened has happened. You can't go and undo it. But from this moment on, if you do the right thing, the next moment is going to be better. And it is also about asking for help, developing that humility that allows us to ask for help. Because this journey of life, this is the first time we're making it. We, while I know a lot of us, we believe in reincarnation, we were here before and all of that. Most of us, and we can't recall any of those things that we could learn from. That is debatable, but it is important to ask for help from people who have been there, done that. And this is why AA and NA is so successful, because you are with people who have walked that road of drinking and drug use and now are walking the road of recovery and can tell you where the potholes are, where the embankments are, and where you need to be careful and so on. So you need to stay connected. One of the first things that would cause you to go back is isolating yourself. I spoke about that earlier in the program. So that to the person listening today who just left rehab, I want to let you know you are not weak. If you struggle, you are not a failure. If you feel tempted, but you must understand that if you go back to the same life, you will get the same results. And in fact, I will add to that. It will be worse every time because this is a progressive illness. It doesn't get better with time. You know, it's like a man cutting a log with a saw and he went for lunch. And when he come back, the saw will start from a fresh place, right where he had left it, right there you're going to start back cutting from. But some people will tell you it's like somebody else was running the saw while he went for lunch because the disease progresses and when you go back, it is worse than before. So that change your people, you'll have to change the places and change the habits. Now, I know change is uncomfortable, even, you know, even a small change sometimes out of our routine can make us feel uncomfortable. But this is what, because if you do the same thing the same way, you cannot expect a different result. That is insanity. You have to change if you want things to change. So finally, let me say that you need to stay connected, you need to stay humble, and you need to stay willing. This is how it works. In fact, in the word how, HOW, is the message. The H stands for honesty. You have to be honest. The O says that you have to be open minded. And the W suggests that you must be willing. So you have to be honest, open minded, and willing if you are going to make this program. And most importantly, I want to assure you that look, there's only three places Doug will take you: prison, madhouse, or cemetery. And you don't want to go to any of those places, at least not today. So stay alive, you know, until next week, Thursday. We will be talking about this again. And I again want to thank Radio and TV Jagriti for allowing this free airtime, free to the national community as a service. I'm also giving of my services free. I've been doing that since 1993 on various media houses and with Radio and TV Jagriti from its inception. So that this program, I want to remind you, is going to be posted on YouTube and Facebook by the station and by myself on our various platforms. It will also be replayed on Radio and TV Jagriti at the end tonight at 10, so that you can go back and listen to it. And if you have any questions, please, you feel free. You have a number on the screen that you can text, or you can post them on YouTube or Facebook. Again, I want to thank the staff at Jagriti for their unwavering support. You know, they have really, even yesterday, I was driving and listening to the advertisements for this, encouraging our national community to come listen. And yeah, up to last night, I was speaking to a friend who assured me that they listen to this program religiously. They don't miss anything. And it is so useful. They have found the material so useful. Yes, I know it is one of my friends suggested it's humongous. It's a long video. And I'm sorry, I will apologize for that, but this is the only format because I'm not allowed live calls on the program because we are running this program on the Zoom platform. But you're quite welcome to call me at the numbers on your screen after the program, and you can look at it in installments. I hope I keep it interesting for some of you to listen to it in its entirety. So I want to thank you all again. And until next week, Thursday, stay alive, stay sober, stay away from trouble. Thank you.